At Repton, in 986 CE, 236 Norse women drank mercury instead of being taken alive because they already knew what Vikings did to the wives of defeated men. The archaeologists found them laid in neat rows, mercury still on their teeth, their hands holding the clay cups. Some clutched each other, mother and daughter, sisters, the youngest only about 15 years old. Listen closely. You can almost hear it. The bubbling sound of liquid metal poured from iron pots, the whispered prayers to Freya, the crying of women who hesitated before friends helped tilt the poison into their mouths. These were not slaves. The jewelry buried with them, silver arm rings, amber beads, bronze brooches, marked them as wives of leaders, women who had run households, who wore keys at their belts to show authority, who had managed farms and estates while their husbands went raiding. But now those husbands lay dead across English fields, cut down at Tettenhall, slaughtered at Budding. The great heathen army that had terrified Britain for decades finally destroyed. And the women knew exactly what was coming. They had seen it before. They had maybe even given the orders themselves. When Norse raiders dragged home Saxon women, when Irish girls stumbled off the longships in chains, when noble daughters from Frankish families were forced to stand unclothed on the auction blocks. The mercury worked quickly, its metallic taste filling their mouths, their bodies shaking, foam spilling from their lips. Their final sight? The wooden beams of the longhouse where they chose to die together instead of living the fate they had once forced on others. Here's the part that keeps me awake at night after reading these reports. These women at Repton chose mercury. Think about that. Mercury, one of the most painful deaths you can imagine. Shaking so hard their bones snapped, blood bubbling from their mouths, their minds breaking as the metal burned through their nerves. And yet they chose this, all 236 of them, because whatever waited beyond those longhouse doors was even worse. What kind of system makes mercury look merciful? Listen, that sound, an auctioneer shouting prices in Old Norse. 20 silver for the young one. His voice echo inside the wooden walls of Dublin's slave market, 793 CE, the year it all began. The Vikings had perfected the system. 3 price levels, 20 silver pieces for virgin girls under 16, 15 for proven breeders, 10 for anyone over 30. His voice cut through the crying, through whispered prayers in Irish, through the clanking of chains. Wood quay. That's where archaeologists uncovered it. The setup was not makeshift, not something raiders had thrown together. This was built for the trade. Warehouses with stone foundations, drainage channels carved into rock, iron rings fixed at perfect intervals along the walls. This was not chance. It was industry. The shackles alone tell the truth. Different sizes. They measured and weighed them all. The big ones were normal iron. The medium ones specially made, slim and light, fitted for women's wrists. And then the small ones, only 4 inches around. Just 4 inches. The archaeologists checked again and again, but the number stayed the same. These were made for children, for wrists no bigger than those of a 7-year-old today. Here's what crushes me. King Otto's tax records from 812. He taxed the slave trade, made it official. 2 silver pieces per person sold through English ports. The paperwork of horror. Officials stamping documents while girls shuffled past in chains. The holding houses stretched 300 feet, divided into sections. Virgins kept separate because their price depended on it. Pregnant women in another area, close to midwives, can't lose the product. And the children. The children were held where their mothers could see them, but never touch them. Control. Do you want to know how systematic it was? They even had veterinarians. The Norse texts called them stock checkers. They checked teeth, tested for pregnancy, looked for sickness, and threw out the ones not fit for sale. Those were dumped into the river. The splash, the struggling, then silence. Dublin was not alone. Hedeby, Birka, Gotland, the same structures show up everywhere. The same drainage lines, the same shackles, the same price charts in the records. From Iceland to the Black Sea, one giant system for turning women into silver. But the warehouses were not the worst part. What broke the archaeologists, what made them stop digging for days, were the personal items. Things scattered under the holding cells, a child's small wooden doll, a bone comb with strands of red hair still tangled in it, a tiny bronze cross with its chain snapped, and the walls, covered with scratches, in Ogham script, in Latin, in runes. Names, prayers, messages. Bridge was here. Christ have mercy. Remember Ashling. Some carved with fingernails until the skin tore. Generations of women leaving their last marks. And it gets darker. The drainage channels. At first they thought these were for waste, just part of normal city design. But then they found bones, infant bones, hundreds of them, washed into special pits because newborns had no value. They couldn't live through the sea journeys. They were bad for business. The smallest shackles revealed another truth. Some were decorated, etched with patterns, carefully worked from costly metals. These were not for poor Irish children. These were for the daughters of kings, of nobles, special orders for wealthy buyers who wanted them. The Dublin market lasted 3 centuries. 300 years. Do the math. 20,000 women and children every year, based on the taxes. 6 million souls. That isn't raiding. That isn't war. That's an economy. And the buyers? Norse settlers, yes, but also Saxons, Franks, even merchants from Byzantium. The trade records still exist in fragments, names, prices, destinations, proof of a system so vast it swallowed generations.
Astrid, 16 winters, a virgin, was sold to Sven Forkbeard for 35 silver. People reduced to lines in an inventory. What archaeologists uncovered in the drainage channels changed everything we thought we knew about Viking systems. The channels weren't only for waste. Listen closer. Hear that echo. Stone cut at sharp angles, water running in careful streams. The Dublin team expected old sewers. Instead, they found an engineering wonder. 820 CE, the year Vikings turned slavery into science. Those channels, they connected all parts. The auction blocks linked to the warehouses to the docks to the ships. One huge system built to move human cargo without losing any piece of property. Water dripped through grooves cut long ago. Each drop carried memory. The archaeologists tracked the channels underground, mapped them. What they found made them call experts, hydraulic engineers. These were no random ditches. The slope was set at 2%, just enough to carry waste, not too steep to break the stone. But here's what shocked them. The channels divided. Large paths for normal waste, smaller lines, only 8 inches wide, led somewhere else. The team crawled through centuries of dirt, headlamps lighting chisel marks still sharp on the stone. The channels ended in pools, limestone basins carved from single blocks. Why would slavers need filters? The answer lay in the sediment, layers stacked like tree rings, and in them arsenic, mercury dust, lead marks. They weren't cleaning waste, they were cleaning poison. Above, the warehouses told another story. Each held 200 people. The base showed it. Post holes every 6 feet, iron rings between. The team rebuilt the plan, calculated the space. 3 square feet per person, enough to sit, not enough to stretch. Drains ran below, air holes cut through beams above. Ventilation balanced to keep people alive, but weak. Too much air and they might resist. Too little and they would die too soon. The Vikings had found the exact balance. But Dublin was only the start. 830 CE, York. The dig there revealed something that made Dublin's holding houses look gentler. They weren't ready for it. They thought it was just another dig. Then they struck timber, preserved in wet ground, huge beams, craft like those for a king's hall. The site spread under today's Coppergate. They dug carefully, inch by inch. It wasn't a warehouse, too fine, too divided. Then came the metal fittings, hardware built for heavy use, locks with extra pins, rooms built for steps in the process. It was a sorting center, not storage, processing. The wood showed marks, grooves where chains rubbed for years, stains that tests showed as human waste, blood, and other fluids the reports refused to name. Sound carried different underground. The York site had echo chambers, rooms where screams would spread, where others would hear. A mental weapon, break them before loading them. The restraint systems were not random either. Wall restraints for standing, flat platforms in the center, beams above with pulleys. The Vikings had planned every step of human suffering. But the trade routes, that's where the largest effort went. 840 CE, the Eastern Road opened. Constantinople, Baghdad, markets where pale northern women brought top prices. The logistics were massive, 3,000 miles across seas, rivers, and land crossings. How to move people that far? The answer was in the ships. Archaeologists found them at Haydabai Harbor, preserved keels and hulls that didn't fit any normal cargo craft. These ships had been rebuilt. Wider beams, lower decks, vents cut in the hulls. They checked the load, 50 to 70 women per ship, stacked in layers just enough to sit. The vents let in salt spray, seawater that kept wounds from closing, stopping infection from spreading too quickly. Every detail calculated. The Dnieper route told even more. Rest stops every 40 miles, walled camps with fresh water, pens built the same way, the same drains, the same pools. From Novgorod to Kiev to the Black Sea, one long chain. Each stop had its workers, ship hands who knew the right amount of food to keep captives alive, but weak, healers who treated wounds that cut value, guards trained to control without leaving marks. The Vikings built whole jobs around the trade. And the system went further than buildings. They made finance tools, credit notes. A woman taken in Ireland could be sold on promise in Constantinople. Letters of credit, fixed prices, insurance on losses in transit. The roots of banking written in human pain. The proof keeps piling up. Special tools, irons marked with merchant signs, scales set for weighing people, record books with ready columns. Species, age, health, origin, buyer, price. Like shipping forms, but for lives. In York, they dug up something even worse than Dublin. The gasp of the archaeologist filled the pit. Her lamp lit something she shouldn't have seen. York, Coppergate. Under the street, they uncovered what froze her. 64 cells, each 6 feet by 4, stone walls dividing them, no windows, drainage linking them all. The supervisor came, looked once, and told everyone but the senior team to leave.
This wasn't a prison. The design was too exact, too specialized. They mapped each room, photographed everything. The wear on the stone told its own story. Grooves smoothed not by chains but by human bodies, moving the same way again and again for years. Listen, that sound is a metal detector screaming. The team scanned each cell. The readings went crazy. Iron was everywhere, not in the walls but in the ground, soaked into the earth itself. Decades of blood sinking into Yorkshire clay. Cell 23 changed it all. The archaeologist, Dr. Sarah Whitfield, was the first inside. Her breath fogged in the cold underground air. She was recording scratches on the wall when she saw them. Small finger bones, infant finger bones, pressed into the mortar between the stones. The cells hadn't been empty when they were found. 876 CE, the year the York site began. The Vikings had learned from Dublin, changed their methods. This wasn't storage anymore. The bones gave the truth. Pelvic scars, weak bones from lost calcium. These women had given birth many times in those cells. Dr. Whitfield's voice cracked in her notes. Subjects show signs of 4 to 6 pregnancies, died around age 22, malnourished, repeated trauma. She stopped, couldn't keep going. Another archaeologist took over. The layout was clear now. 64 cells set in a square around a central yard, with drains. Guards could watch everything from one spot. But what were they watching? The artifacts gave the answer. Feeding tubes, restraints made for pregnant women, tools used by midwives. It was a breeding site. 40 years, that's how long it ran. The tree ring tests proved it. From 876 to 916, 40 years of forced births,
40 years of stolen babies, 40 years of women dying in stone boxes 6 feet by 4. The DNA ended the lies. Not all were foreigners. 30% had Norse blood. They were breeding their own women too. Women who couldn't pay debts. Women who defied the law. Women declared slaves. But then came what made Dr. Whitfield call the police, even 1,000 years later, the way the bodies lay. They weren't scattered, not random. These women died in rows, at the same time. A mass killing, by number, by weight. The poison tests showed more. No wounds, no cuts, no weapons. They had been poisoned, mercury in their bones. Just like Repton, they chose the same way out. The church records revealed worse. The York Minster Archives, Father Benedict's accounts, 900 CE, written in Latin, received 40 silver for rental of next-door property to Norse merchants. The church owned the land. The church collected rent. The church knew. The pages rustled as the researchers translated, every payment listed, every year recorded. The breeding site brought in 200 silver a year. 10% went to the church. Blood money turned holy. The breeding program had quotas, 12 babies per cell per year. That's 768 babies every year. Where did they go? Records from York stocks showed it. Ships left every month. The cargo lists said it clear. Young stock. Sent to Iceland, to Norway, to Rus, sent wherever Norse homes wanted slaves, raised from birth, trained to obey, never knowing freedom. Dr. Whitfield found more, personal things hidden in cracks in the walls, a bone needle, thread made from human hair, tiny baby clothes. The women had been sewing in the dark, by touch, for children they'd never hold. The dig showed the sorting room, babies divided within hours, boys to one side, girls to another. The weak, the drains had a second use. The team found small bones washed into them, hundreds. And the technology, 900 CE, and they had water pipes, heated floors. The heating system usually meant Roman design, but this was Norse work. They built it to keep breeding women alive in the winters, to get the most children. The medical rooms shocked even tough archaeologists. Surgical tools, birthing chairs, herbs. They had healers on staff. They kept the women alive through many births. They stretched out the suffering for silver. Cell 41 gave one more truth. Words cut into stone, not in runes, in Latin. Elfgu, 23 winters, 6 sons taken. My soul dies with each. Below, a second hand wrote, we sang her to Valhalla. Even here, even in hell, they tried to comfort each other. The York site made about 30,000 slaves in 40 years. That's the careful count, based on survival, on births, on deaths. But this was only step 1 of 3. Listen, that sound of stone grinding, a Norse woman crushing henbane seeds in a bowl. 850 CE, the Gotland dig found her workshop whole. Mortars, pestles, clay jars strained purple by nightshade. Glass vials once filled with mercury. The Vikings had turned chemistry into control.
Eric Lindfist found her, the herbalist, buried with her tools. The study of her work area showed 37 different mixtures: henbane, hemlock, wolfsbane, mercury salts, arsenic powders. But here's what made him step back from the table. These weren't medicines. The amounts were wrong, too strong, too pure. The drugs weren't meant to kill. Henbane in small amounts makes visions, obedience, memory loss. The Vikings knew this, had known for ages. The marks inside those mortars showed repeated use. Same recipes, same measures, same doses, used again and again. The Gotland workshop tied into something bigger. Stone drains ran from her grinding room to the holding areas. Drugged women could be moved without a fight, without memory, without proof of what was done to them. 873 CE, Port Morrow, Ireland. The bog cutter's scream rang across the marsh. They had found her body, preserved 1,000 years, every detail still clear. Her red hair braided, fingernails painted with ochre, stomach full of henbane seeds. Dr. Maeve Collins led the team. What they dug up changed everything. This wasn't a ritual death. The position was wrong, the ropes were different. This woman had been thrown away. But why preserve her body first with mercury? The answer was mercury. Her flesh soaked with it. Not enough to kill quickly, just enough to bring madness, shaking, visions. The Vikings were testing, finding doses, using Irish women as test subjects. The bog kept everything, even her face. Eyes wide, mouth open. She was awake when they threw her in. Awake, but frozen. The henbane mix had left her aware, but unable to move, unable to cry out, as the bog water filled her lungs. She wasn't the only one. The Portmorrow bog held 17 more bodies, all women, all with mercury in their flesh, all with henbane in their stomachs, all thrown away when the trials failed. Dr. Collins found more. The scars told the same story, not random, planned. The same cuts, the same depths, the same times healed between wounds. Someone was keeping records, testing reactions, improving methods. Each broken bone told it clear. The Uppsala medical records, 900 CE. Norse doctors wrote it all down, not for healing, but for harming. They wrote exactly how much force broke each bone, how long recovery took, how to cause the most pain without killing. Bone studies across Scandinavia showed the same. Hundreds of women's skeletons with the same order of injuries. First, right arm bone broken, then left arm bone broken, then ribs, then pelvis. A set order, a training manual made from broken bodies. The drugs made it worse. Henbane before pain made memories fuzzy, made witnesses unsure. Mercury after made them look insane. Who would trust a slave's story when she shook and screamed like madness? But the drugs went deeper. The Vikings had learned how to mix drugs. Henbane with alcohol, mercury with lead salts. These left women awake but weak, aware but unable to resist. The perfect drug chains. 890 CE, the Birka graves, a mass burial of 12 women, all with mercury in their bones, all with old injuries healed, all with proof of many births. But one stood out. Grave 734. She was older, maybe 35. Her bones told a different story. The same break pattern, but healed again and again. She survived longer than the rest, at least 7 years. Her teeth told more. Worn down, not just from age, but from grinding, from clenching and pain. And something else. File marks. She had sharpened her teeth. She had made them into weapons. The grooves showed years of work. DNA under her nails survived. Male DNA. Norse DNA. She had fought, drawn blood, left proof. Even after 7 years of torture, she kept fighting. The dig shifted focus. This wasn't only a victim. Her grave goods were different. Hidden under slave items, they found a small knife, runic marks, a silver pendant that didn't fit. She had hidden them, saved them, prepared. Her bones told she had lived in the system 7 years before she escaped. But where did she go? The answer came from the Gotland workshop. Not all the mixes were for control. Some were cures, some were healing, some were quick poisons. Poisons that looked like sickness. The herbalist wasn't just dosing slaves, she was teaching them, passing knowledge, making a chain of women who knew Mercury's signs, who knew henbane's limits, who could turn Viking drugs against the Vikings. The bog bodies weren't all test subjects. Some were failed rebels, women who tried to poison their captors but got it wrong, women who tested mercury on themselves to grow resistance, who died trying to perfect the mix they would later share. 890 CE.
The year the whisper chain grew strong. The proof shows a change. Fewer women drugged, more Vikings poisoned, more women dying by mercury on their own terms at their own time. The knowledge spread from Dublin to York to Gotland. The Vikings tried new tricks, but they had built something they could not stop. Women who knew chemistry, who knew pain's edge, who had nothing left to lose. One runestone still tells it. Here lies Thorsten, strong in
Battle, weak at his own table. The meaning was clear for anyone who could read it. He'd been poisoned by someone who served his meals, someone he never suspected. The planned violence had created planned resistance. The same system of control became the same system of rebellion. Workshops teaching chemistry, cells passing secrets, drains carrying more than waste. They carried notes, carried powders, carried hope. The Vikings had turned cruelty into an industry. The women turned their fight into an industry too. But drugs were just one weapon. What archaeologists found next showed how Viking culture itself was built to support the system. The marriage rules, the property rights, the religion, all of it designed to make women into goods. The drugs made it possible, but the culture made it profitable. Hear the sound of old parchment turning, dust moving in the archive light. 880 CE, the Grágis law codes, Iceland's first legal books. Line after line explaining women's legal place, or the lack of it. The name starts as a whisper, becomes a murmur, turns into a battle cry that makes Viking raiders run for their ships. Gunhild. Just one word. It makes tough men look over their shoulders, set double guards, give up camps they had held for years. 923 CE, the Irish coast. A slave ship drags into Dublin harbor with half the captives missing. The captain's note survives in pieces. 23 taken in the night. Guards found with crushed necks. No alarm sounded. His hands shake as he writes. Ink splatters. Listen to the harbor master breathe heavy as he reads it. This was the third ship that month. Same signs. Young women gone. Guards dead in silence. But here's the part that terrifies him. The locks weren't smashed. They were opened. Someone had keys. The search finds nothing. No witnesses, no tracks. Just that name cut into dock posts, scratched on warehouse walls. Gunhild was here. The traders pay for more guards. Buy stronger locks. It changes nothing. The rescues continue. 925 CE, Hedeby. The screams start at midnight, not from the slave pens, from the guardhouse. By dawn, 12 Viking soldiers lie dead, throats cut neat and clean. The holding pens stand empty, 40 women gone. Blood pools set in perfect circles around each body. The words of the one survivor shake even the hardest jarls. She moved like smoke, knew every blind corner, every guard change. His voice breaks. She smiled as she cut Magnus's throat, whispered something in Irish. The freed women sang as they followed her into the trees. But here's what the leaders can't accept: the knowledge. Guard schedules, warehouse maps, drug mixes. This isn't chance. This isn't a random escape. This is someone who knows the system from the inside. Someone who studied every weak point. The burned shell of Gunhild's first strike tells it. A breeding site outside Uppsala. 20 cells, full medical staff. The fire began in 6 places at once. The women were gone before the flames reached the roof, but the guards were still chained inside their own cells. 925 CE. The raids grow, linked attacks, same night. Dublin loses a warehouse, York's docks burn, Gotland's slave market caves into its own drains. 300 miles apart, same time. Impossible. Unless you have a network. The Vikings find traces in the ash, runic marks.
not normal runes, changed, a code only certain women could read. The messages are sharp, target lists, maps, guard names, habits. Gunhild wasn't only freeing slaves, she was building an army. Her style changes with each strike. At first, silence, quick kills, hidden escapes. By 926, she leaves signs. Guards found set in Viking death poses, their own branding irons heated and pressed to their skin. Their screams lasted hours. The trade guilds combine forces. They hire the best hunters, offer riches for her capture. The trackers find her camps, always empty, always trapped. One loses 3 fingers to a spring blade hidden in a bedroll. Another steps into a pit lined with sharp stakes. The doctor's note says, the stakes were coated in henbane. He died seeing visions. But Gunhild makes one mistake. She leaves a clue. A survivor from the Orkney raid. A young guard who pretended to be dead among the bodies. He saw her face, described her. The scar stood out, a burn mark on her cheek, a Viking merchant's brand. Property of Håkon Grimson of Trondheim. The files still exist. Håkon's estate records, 915 CE. Irish female, 16 winters. High quality. Assigned to housework. That's all. But compare it with birth lists, breeding logs. There it is. 4 live births. 2 boys, 2 girls. All sold after weaning. She had been in the system 8 years. 8 years of abuse, forced births, watching her children sold.